Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I'll be taking a look at all of the best players to buy ahead of Game Week 20, including which is the best budget defender to be bringing in right now. Right then, so let's get stuck in with the main topic I want to talk about today. But before we do, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It would really help me out, but also it means you don't miss out on any future content. For now though, let's look at the best cheap defenders to buy. And honestly, just narrowing it down to 4 was hard work. There's a lot of different options out there right now under 5 million, but I think all of these 4 represent probably the best value for money in the game right now. So if you've got any of them, you're probably laughing, but the question is, which one, if you don't have them, would you prioritize buying right now? Or would you have a combination of 2 or 3 of them? First up, let's look at Nottingham Forest and Milenkovic in particular. Now, Nottingham Forest across the season have been absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, they're flying high in the Champions League spots, but their defensive data in particular has been one of the key reasons why they've been performing to this level. 1.1 XGC per 90 across the season. Very, very decent. In fact, it's the 3rd best in the league, only behind Arsenal and Liverpool. So they're competing with the very best in terms of defensive data. And 8 clean sheets this season as well, which again is amongst the very best in the league. So they're performing to a high level, they're getting us the clean sheets, they're getting us the defensive data. So we definitely want to be targeting a Nottingham Forest defender if at all possible. Now, for me, Milenkovic is the standout pick. I also like Ollie, by the way. 5.1 million though, so he's a little bit too expensive to be counting as a budget defender now, I would say. But if you've got him, you're obviously laughing. What I would say though, and the reason I prefer Milenkovic anyway, is the fact that his goal threat is a lot higher than Ollie. Ollie in particular is much more driven towards the assist threat. And I know he scored goals this season, but if we're predicting future points, he's more likely to continue getting assists than he is goals. Whereas Milenkovic at 0.4 cheaper is far more likely to be picking up goals. Those are, of course, from set pieces, where he is a towering giant in the middle, and he gets his head on the end of a lot of chances from crosses, corners, things like that. So again, I wouldn't be saying it would be ridiculous to think or believe he might get another couple of goals before the end of the season. And if he bags those in weeks where they also pick up a clean sheet, then you're also looking at a mega haul rather than maybe a 6-7 pointer. So I really like Milenkovic. He's very high on the expected goal threat, although not the highest of these 4 options, it must be said. But again, the next few fixtures are good. Wolves away, Liverpool at home is the difficult one, of course, but you could probably look at benching him that week. Especially if you've got any one of the other 3 options I'm going to present, you can easily rotate them in and have them in a combination for a 3rd defender. But Liverpool away, Liverpool at home, is obviously not ideal, followed by Southampton at home, Bournemouth away. 3 of the next 4, definitely playable, and considering Forest data, he is a very good pickup for the next few game weeks. Over to Robinson on the right-hand side. He's probably got the best fixtures of the lot. Over the next 4, he plays 2 promoted clubs, Ipswich and Leicester. He also plays West Ham, who are struggling, and Man United, who, let's face it, are not a difficult fixture right now either. His underlying attacking data, also not bad, 0.17, so it matches Milenkovic. But what I would say is that is mainly driven towards assist threat. So we're not expecting the big hauls from him. Obviously, if he gets an assist, he gets the clean sheet and he gets bonus, then we're looking at a 12-pointer. But considering Fulham have only kept 3 clean sheets so far this season, I don't think clean sheets are necessarily something we can expect week on week. So we're much more looking at a drip feed of points for Robinson, but he is being consistent. He's got 7 assists so far. The data's good and the fixtures coming are also good. So I wouldn't put him in a must-buy category, but he is very popular and Fulham defence is popular. So if they do manage to keep clean sheets in, let's say, 2 of the next 4, and you don't have a Fulham defender, it could punish you rank-wise. The other options at Fulham are also decent though. So Castagna and Anderson, both at 4.2. Very decent options if you are really squeezed on budget. And in particular, Castagna is basically matching Robinson for attacking threat on the opposite wing. They're both playing wing backs right now, so a lot of attacking threat there. And Castagna comes in, I think, at 0.5 cheaper right now. So he is a budget pickup, but he's only really safe in the team until Tete comes back. And I think we're expecting that around mid-Feb. So a decent middle-term option in Castagna, but I think enough messing about really with the Fulham defence. I'd prefer to go for the guy that I know is nailed, 90 minutes every single week for the whole season, good data, and is the assist leader in the league so far this season. But again, he's probably not my preferred pickup right now, even with the fixtures to come. Lewis Hall, again, brilliant so far this season, especially in recent game weeks. Newcastle have kept 4 clean sheets in their last 4 games and have scored, I believe, 13 goals in that time as well. Lewis Hall has been involved in a few of those too. I think he's got 3 assists in that time. And the fixtures, although there is one red fixture on paper in the next 4 game weeks, I would back them to beat every single one of those clubs on their day. Tottenham are struggling at the moment and are a little bit of a basket case. Now, I don't use that word in the sense that I think they're a terrible team. It's just they are all over the place. They do score a lot of goals, so that is a word of warning if you wanted to pick up Lewis Hall and start him this week. But they also concede a lot of goals, and the chances that they're conceding down that right flank, where Lewis Hall will be operating, so left flank for Newcastle, are numerous right now. So Hall could easily benefit. He's in the form of his career so far, absolutely phenomenal player on his day, and he's linking up really well with both Gordon and Isak down that flank. I really like him, not just for this week, but especially over the next stretch of fixtures, and Newcastle's underlying defensive data is also really good, almost exactly matching Nottingham Forest at 1.1 XGC per 90 and 7 clean sheets so far this season too. So thoroughly decent, really good pickup. Maybe not the ideal timing to be bringing him in ahead of Tottenham away because we know they can score goals, but the data's good. A lot of assist threat there, as you can see, 0.2 XGI per 90. And then once Tottenham's out of the way, and hey, you might even back them to keep a clean sheet in that game the way they're playing at the moment. After that, Wolves, Bournemouth, Southampton, it's a great run. So I like him a lot as well. And honestly, I've already got him in my side. I have loved owning him. I regret benching him against Man United. So we know even against the slightly better attacks, they can still keep clean sheets. It's not only against the promoted clubs. Lewis Hall, again, budget pickup that I absolutely love. However, none of the 3 I've already mentioned are probably my favourite pickup right now. I think my favourite pickup would be Daniel Munoz, the last player I want to talk about. And although he didn't haul in game week 19, everything I saw in that game as a Southampton fan, so I watched the full 90, suggested to me that Daniel Munoz is going to be a fantastic pickup over the next few game weeks. The one asterisk here is obvious. It's the Chelsea home game in game week 20. It's not a great time to be buying him because in most scenarios, you'd expect Chelsea to be able to score against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace are an okay defence, but they're not an elite level defence by any means. They're not as good as Newcastle or Forest are defensively in the data, and they're certainly not a top tier defence, and I don't expect them necessarily to keep a clean sheet against Chelsea. Who knows? We could be surprised. However, after that, the run that Palace have beyond even the next 4 are absolutely ridiculous. So Leicester, West Ham, Brentford in the next 3 after Chelsea, but the run continues for quite a long time afterwards. And Daniel Munoz in particular, I loved what I saw in game week 19, but even before that, across the season, he has been picking up absolutely ridiculous data for what is effectively a right wing back, but at times it's felt like he's been playing right wing. He's in and around the box so often. He gets chances at the back post every single game. And if you look at the data, not just across the season, but week by week, every week there seems to be at least one decent XG chance that he picks up. So they're always creating him chances. And almost all of the XGI on screen, 0.26 is the highest, by the way, of all of these defenders. But almost all of that, even better, is goal threat. And although he's missed chances, he's started to finally put a few of them away this season. And I do believe that over the next few game weeks, Daniel Munoz is going to be an absolutely fantastic pickup. As I mentioned, I've already got both Robinson and Hall in my side. I would love to find room for a Nottingham Forest defender and Daniel Munoz. And currently, if I was to prioritise one, it would be to bring in Daniel Munoz. For me, though, unfortunately, I'm just not sure who I would sell. I've got Trent, I've got Gabriel, I've got Robinson and Hall, and then I've got Greaves, who is too cheap for me to do it in one move anyway, and that would be my 5th defender. So let me know in the comments below, who you would sell out of those bunch for Daniel Munoz, and if you think it is worth doing even in this game week, or whether or not you'd wait until game week 21. As it stands, if you desperately needed a defender to bring in game week 20, I think I'd be minded to go with Milenkovic, maybe slightly ahead of Robinson, even though Milenkovic has got a slightly worse fixture. Just love that goal threat, love the fact that Nottingham Forest are very, very tight defensively. And then if you're not so bothered about the fixture in particular this week, I think my recommendation would be Daniel Munoz. But again, all four of these are absolutely fantastic. You're loving life if you've got any one of these right now, or in fact a combination of 2 or 3 of them. And the more of these you can squeeze into your team, the better. So another player to buy from Crystal Palace that I do like the look of a lot at the moment is Eberechi Eze. A bit of a forgotten man this season, but coming into the 24-25 season, he was a very hot topic. I absolutely loved him. I couldn't have recommended him higher, but he's been maybe a bit frustrating this season. The data's not quite as good as you'd expect from him. I think he's maybe been impacted by the loss of Elise as well, and of course he's had injuries too. So he hasn't really shown the form that maybe we come to expect of a player of his quality and caliber. Only 4 attacking returns so far this season, and the data at 0.42 XGI per 90 isn't terrible, but it's maybe not what we'd want from someone like him. But he did score the goal against Southampton, looks slightly back to the groove that we'd expect him to be playing within, and I do expect him to score a lot of points over the next 5 game weeks. Fantasy Football Hub expect just under 25 points over the next 5, so we're expecting just under 5 points a game week. That's an attacking return every single week on average. But after Chelsea's out the way, who, by the way, just lost against Ipswich, so it's not impossible that he returns against them either, it is, like I said with Daniel Munoz, a very good run of fixtures. The question for me is whether or not you'd spend the extra 0.8, 0.7 million ahead of someone like an Ismail Assar, who obviously plays in the same team, has the same fixtures, bit cheaper, and actually so far this season has got both better goal threat and better assist threat. Now, I think this is a question of head versus heart. My head is telling me that if I was to pick up one now, Eberechi Eze is more likely to show the quality he's got in seasons past and up his game to the level that we might expect him to. Whereas Ismail Assar is a bit more of an unknown quantity. Now, obviously, what we've seen so far in a Palace shirt has been very decent, especially in recent weeks. And the data against Southampton was also really good, unfortunate not to return, and was actually, again, better than Eze's. So maybe there's an argument here to say that whilst Eze is a good pick, and I don't have any problem in anyone going out and buying him over the next few weeks, I would say out of him versus Ismail Assar, if I was looking to save a bit of money, it's an easy downgrade to make, and you still get good data, if not better data, based on what we've seen so far this season. I think if I had to pick one of the two right now, I might be slightly more tempted to go with Ismail Assar. Even with Chelsea at home in game week 20, I don't think it's a terrible time to pick him up, just because of that extra little bit of saving, and that money can go a long way elsewhere in your side. However, don't be surprised whatsoever if a player of Eze's quality is able to step up his game in this period, especially when we get to playing teams like Leicester, West Ham and Brentford at home. I think points are on the board for Eze as well. He's still on some set pieces. He's still going to tick along very nicely. And when he does do anything in terms of attacking returns, he's very good on the bonus points as well, because he is so creative and he is so heavily involved in everything good that Palace do. So I do expect him to come good in the next 5 game weeks. He is a bit of a differential, but out of him and Sarr, I think I'd still very slightly prefer Sarr right now. So we've obviously talked about one Newcastle asset in this video already, that being Lewis Hall, but beyond defensively, do we want to look at targeting the Newcastle attack more than just Alexander Isak, who is in something like 60% of teams right now, maybe even 80 or 90% of active teams in and amongst the top million. So he's owned by almost anyone. It would be silly of me to go into a video just recommending him because you've probably already got him. So do we want to kind of double down on the Newcastle attack and go with Anthony Gordon alongside Alexander Isak? Now, Gordon's not the only pick that you could go for. You could also look at Jacob Murphy, but as explained in other previous videos, I'm just not that confident in Murphy's minutes, and I think for the extra money, the value you get out of Gordon is that reliability of minutes and slightly better data as well. So at 13.7% ownership, he's still not massively owned at all. He was picked up by a few managers in the last couple of game weeks because they were looking for Saka replacements or, more recently, a Bruno replacement. So the ownership has crept up a little bit, but I still think he's undervalued at 7.4 million. He has had a couple of price rises recently, and I would expect that to continue. And 9 attacking returns so far this season isn't bad going, but maybe not the blockbuster levels of attacking returns that we're used to in some other assets, and therefore he's maybe just been a little bit of a forgotten man. The fixtures to come, though, I mentioned it with Lewis Hall, absolutely fantastic, especially I think from an attacking point of view. Actually, Spurs away from home, we've talked about Spurs and their defensive frailties. They're missing a lot of their first choice defenders. Udogi's one of the latest injuries as well. So are they going to be able to keep Newcastle at bay even at home? I'm not so sure that's the case, and I think Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon are both going to be licking their lips at the prospect of playing Spurs in game week 20, followed by Wolves, who, yes, have been improved under Pereira, but are still a bottom half side with poor defensive data. Bournemouth, Southampton and Fulham, it's a pretty good run, without being necessarily the best run you could ever think of. It is a good run from an attacking point of view, and Anthony Gordon ticking along very nicely, 4 attacking returns in his last 4 game weeks, a couple of bonus points in there as well. He is a player that you can almost rely on to start matches and get you the odd attacking return at least every other game week. Beyond that as well, the data suggests that maybe he's been a bit unlucky. 0.36 XG per 90 is pretty decent for a midfielder. Obviously, we know he plays left wing as part of that front 3, so we know he's not quite out of position, but almost out of position. And that data reflects a player who is very close to goal. He's creating lots of chances, but also at the end of a lot of chances. And I think Anthony Gordon at 7.4 is a great value pickup in the midfield as maybe your third midfielder for the next 5 or 6 game weeks. So we have to talk about Chris Wood, and he's a player that has been extremely frustrating to me all season. I haven't owned him once. I was concerned about his expected minutes at the start of the season, and honestly, even up until this point, I've still been fairly concerned because he does get taken off early fairly regularly, not every single week, but fairly regularly, and 70 to 80 minutes is what we've come to expect from him. The data as well is not blockbuster for someone who is starting up front every single week for a Premier League club. 0.39 XG per 90 is not the best that you're going to see. In fact, it's only very slightly better than Anthony Gordon, who we've just talked about, who is obviously classified as a midfielder and gets that extra point for a goal. However, Chris Wood just keeps proving me wrong every single week at the moment. He had a little dry spell up until game week 19, and then he went and got a goal assist and really damaged me once again. And it comes to a point where there's almost an inevitability about Chris Wood and Nottingham Forest. And if Forest score, I look at SofaScore and I instantly know before the goal even flashes up as to who it is, it's going to have Chris Wood's name attached to it. And I think there's something to be said in FPL for when you just have that gut feeling and you know ahead of time who the goal scorer is going to be instinctively before you even know. That's when you know that that player is someone that you probably want to own, because if Nottingham Forest continue this run, which looking at the fixtures, we talked about Milenkovic earlier, the fixtures are pretty good. And again, good from an attacking point of view. Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton in the next 4 of the next 5. Liverpool's the tough one. And maybe there's an outside chance that he gets benched in that game. We saw it happen. I think it was away at Arsenal. So again, a tough opposition earlier on in the season, that he did get a rest against the stronger opponent and they played a little bit of a hybrid system. So it's not impossible that that happens. But elsewhere, you've got to think that attacking returns are going to keep flowing for Chris Wood in game week 20, game week 22, game week 24 I like as well against Brighton. Bournemouth's a fairly tough fixture these days, but you wouldn't put it past him. And 11 goals already. Like I said, there's an inevitability about him. Fantasy Football Hub expects him to continue scoring goals, 26 points over the next 5 game weeks, ticking along at over 5 points a week. And at 6.7 million, if you're frustrated with the likes of Nicholas Jackson, or you're looking at away from Matheus Cunha, who's just been banned for the Nottingham Forest game, as it happens. He will be back after that, though. It's only a 1-game Premier League ban and 1 in the FA Cup, so you don't have to sell him. But Cunha's fixtures aren't looking great. In fact, they're looking pretty awful, honestly. Whereas Chris Woods are looking really good, and he doesn't have the ban in game week 20. He's also a little bit cheaper, and he's ticking along really nicely. The other benefit for Chris Wood is that if he scores, he's very likely to get maximum bonus points as well, because Nottingham Forest, they keep it tight, but they don't necessarily score that many goals going forward. So if they score 1 goal or 2 goals in a 2-0, 1-0 win, or possibly even in a draw, Chris Wood is very likely to be the guy that gets all of the bonus points for a striker who gets extra bonus points in the system for the goals, and therefore he's much more likely to beat any midfielders who score, or maybe even opponents who score. So I really like Chris Wood. The data is maybe just something that's put me off of him, especially alongside the expected minutes being a little bit under the 90-minute mark that we'd classically want our forward to have. But he's got everything else and he keeps ticking along nicely and he's at a good price point. So maybe it's time I just rip off the plaster and just go for him anyway. So the final player I wanted to talk about today is Ollie Watkins. And this may be a little bit of an opportunistic one. And again, possibly a short-term one as well. Ollie Watkins, until recently, hadn't even been in the Villa starting lineup. So that is, of course, a massive concern for anyone looking to go there. But with John Duran's ban for 3 games, and he'll be back for, I believe, the Everton game. 2 of them were in the league, 1 was in the FA Cup. So Ollie Watkins is almost guaranteed to get Leicester at home. Now, he's just gotten a goal, assist and bonus points against Brighton. So there's no question about whether or not he should start against Leicester whilst Duran is out. And he'll probably get 90 minutes as well. So this is the perfect on-ramp for a player like Ollie Watkins if you can afford him. And Leicester have been all at sea defensively. They did actually play really well against Man City for what it's worth. But outside of that, the XGC that they've been conceding under Ruud van Nistelrooy has been amongst the very worst in the league and has been a drop-off from what they were conceding under Cooper as well. So this is a team that should be very open and there for the taking for Ollie Watkins. The data is absolutely brilliant as well. 0.67 XG per 90 is really good. Again, if you just compare that to the last section with Chris Wood, it's almost-ish double what Chris Wood has right now. So it's very, very decent. The problem with Watkins, and the reason we haven't been able to recommend him, is because his data isn't matched by the X minutes, and the X minutes have just been too low. And obviously this is per 90 data. So for him to have a 2/3 chance of a goal in a game, he needs to get 90 minutes. And until now, he just hasn't been. So this is one of the first weeks in recent memory since Ollie Watkins has been back in the side, and you can almost guarantee that he'll get 90 minutes because not only is Duran out, but Rodgers is also out as well. So they'll be struggling from an attacking standpoint. Watkins absolutely needs to lead the line for them and probably do a little bit of lead work in the midfield as well to link up play. So I like him a lot for Leicester at home. And then the question will be whether or not he's beyond a 1 game week punt. And I think there's a very good chance that after Brighton, he played really well. And after Leicester, where I'd imagine he has a pretty good time, after that, I think that there's a good chance that he keeps his starting 11 spot. And Emery has been very happy to rotate the 2 of them, and I don't think either of them are ever going to be true 90-minute men once they're both available, but the player who's been in form has been the one to start the games, and if Ollie Watkins proves his form and has a good game against Leicester, that'll be 2 good games in a row, and you've got to think that Emery will favour continuing to start him against Everton and beyond. As you can see, after Leicester, it's still a good run. Obviously, Arsenal isn't ideal, but Everton, West Ham and Wolves otherwise is a great run. So if you're willing to spend that little bit more, admittedly, that is quite a lot for a striker who isn't named Alexander Isak right now. But if you do have the money and you're looking for someone who is going to be extremely differential in the top ranks, because although 15% ownership isn't low, that will mostly be dead teams now. If you want to go there, I think this is the perfect time to do so, and the upside is undoubtedly there for Leicester at home, and then you're kind of chancing your arm that he plays well enough in that to continue to start beyond that as well. Overall, I think that Ollie Watkins is a good pick, but it is definitely on the higher risk side of things. Now, as we reach the end of the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed today's show, of course. But also, if there are any players that I haven't had a chance to talk about today that you'd like me to, just drop a comment below and I'll get back to you before the deadline.